Okay, part 2, pick back up. So extra biblical sources. So these will be sources outside of the scriptures by his historians. Okay, so a famous one, Flavius Josephus. He is quoting Agacarthes. Okay, this is what he says. This is what Agacarthes relates of our nation, talking about the Yehudim. But when Ptolemy had taken a great many captives, both from mountainous parts of Judea and from the places of Jerusalem and Samaria and the places near Mount Gerizim, he led them all into Egypt and settled them there. So the rise of Alexander the Great, we talked, he had his 4 Jews before Alexander the Great died. So he hadn't died yet. And remember, Ptolemy was one of his generals. This is the son of Lagus. And he brought a lot of Yehudim into Africa and settled them there. Okay, let's look what it says. And as he knew that the people of Jerusalem were most faithful in observance of oaths and covenants, nay, there were not a few other Jews who of their own accord went into Egypt, as invited by the goodness of the soil and the liberality of Ptolemy. Antiquity of the Jews, book 12, chapter 1, page 245. So, Ptolemy brought in a bunch of Yehudim from Jerusalem and Judea. Also brought in some people of Samaria. And they didn't get along there neither. So the people of Samaria ended up going back. So their beef is for real. Okay. But anyway, and then there were some people who went on their own. Okay, but isn't it saying in the Torah not to go back in Africa? Not to go back into Egypt? Was there a warning to a certain prophet to a bunch of people? Not to go down there?
Don't go back.
So we're just building up the case that they went there. That there are eyewitnesses, that there are people that saw them go there. Strabo, a historian and philosopher of his time, the people of Western Judea were part Egyptian ancestry. But he says all of the inhabitants are mixed up. This is the most prevalent of the accredited reports in regard to the Temple of Jerusalem, represents the ancestors of the present Judeans, as they are called Egyptians. Okay, Nation Knows No Color Line, J.A. Rogers, page 123. But in those times, if you were to be called an Egyptian, it's like being called Ethiopia. So he's calling them, the people of Jerusalem, Egyptian. He's thinking they're the same people. Well, we have a scenario. Didn't something happen to one of the apostles in New Testament? Shaul, art thou not the Egyptian? So Romans couldn't tell an Egyptian from an Israelite. They couldn't tell them apart. You know? It's like if I brought Manny Marquez up in here, and somebody else from Cuba, we all had the same clothes on. They were just a bunch of black guys. That is the exact same thing. Did not know. Might look the same, but not the same people. Cornelius Tacitus, okay, another historian. Tacitus of about 90 AD, so 20 years after Jerusalem was destroyed, says many assert that the Jews are of Ethiopian race. For Romans to have taken them for Ethiopians is clear indication of their color, since the Ethiopians were definitely black to the Romans. Okay, J. Rogers again, Nation Knows No Color Line. If Israel went into the interior of Africa, where's the proof? What you talking about, Willis? Travelers and explorers. Okay, travelers and explorers. Nahum Schlotz. This is a European Jew. So there's a European Jew. The tradition of the Jewish trader in the Sahara stretches back to biblical times. I wish I could. The Jewish trader in Sahara stretches back to biblical times. Got to bring it back. The Jewish trader in the Sahara stretches back to biblical times. It is not at all surprising to encounter in every part of the desert traces and even survivals of a primitive Judaism. Pre-temple. Pre-temple. which at one time played an important role in the whole region of Sahara from Senegal to the very border of Somaliland. Where is Senegal at? All the way over here. Where is Somaliland at? All the way on the east side of here. Once again, this is a European Jew. Mungo Park, Englishman. He died in West Africa. He made 2 trips. He probably should have made that second one. Mungo Park travels into the interior of Africa. From Wale to Timbuktu. Everybody has probably heard of Timbuktu. Timbuktu is a real place. Okay? From Wale to Timbuktu was 11 days more, but water more plentiful, and the journey was usually performed upon bullocks. He said there were many Jews at Timbuktu. There were many Jews at Timbuktu. There were many Jews at Timbuktu. There were many Jews at Timbuktu, but they all spoke Arabic, and they used to say prayers as the Moors. It's the same man, Mungo Park, who could not tell a Mohammedan from a African from a Yehudi. They all dressed the same, and there was one scenario where they didn't know who he was, and it was like, identify yourself, or what kind of religion you got. And in the book he says they called over, as they said, 2 Yahoos or 2 Yehudi. But at that point in time, the Yehudim had lost their prominence, unless you were just extremely affluent, just had cash like that. Okay, and a lot of them did. Okay, this is so this guy was English. This guy's Arab, Muslim. Okay, he's a cartographer, geographer, Egyptologist. He's from, I think, Baghdad. Before leaving Ghana, however, references should be made to 1 or 2 writers of the Middle Ages who were familiar with the history of the Sudanese Jews. Thus far, Arabic manuscript of the 12th century, the author, which is usually referred to as Ed Risi, speaking of the Lamanats Tekur, states that there were only 2 towns in the district, which he places in the South Kingdom of Ghana, and adds, according to what the people of the century report, the inhabitants are Jews. But for the most part, they are plunged in piety and ignorance. When they have reached the age of puberty, they brand the countenance or at least the temples with fire. This is the mark that serves to identify them. All the dwellings in the country are built on the banks of the river which flows into the Nile. Hebrews in West Africa, page 234. So very common knowledge in West Africa that there were the Yehudim, there were Jews there, and that. So we're asking the question: when all these people in biblical times and when they ran into Africa, what happened? Where'd they go? What in the world has that got to do with me over here? Graham Hancock. This is another European man. Okay, I call this dude. Y'all remember Indiana Jones? He like Indiana Jones for real. This man was looking like, I think one of Indiana Jones probably made off his book. This man went looking for the ark. This guy is looking for the Ark of the Covenant. And in his book, he's like, it's got to be in Ethiopia. So I'm not an advocator of the ark and going to Ethiopia. I'm not. But the information that he has on, well, we'll just read. There were always Jews in Ethiopia. Now we have we're coming up on Purim, and something happened. There was a certain person named what? Haman. And Haman convinced the king to have an edict made throughout all the kingdom. To do what? To slay all the Jews, all the Yehudim in every province. And what was his province again? From Shushan Palace all the way to Ethiopia. So there were always Jews in Ethiopia from the beginning. Both the Portuguese Jesuit Balthazar Teles in the 17th century, so the 1600s. Okay, signed and sealed, page 458. But from all this, was it legitimate to conclude that there had been waves of Hebrew migration into Ethiopia for hundreds of years before the 5th century BC? Clues scattered throughout the Old Testament which seem to bear witness of some kind of sustained Hebrew migration to Abyssinia in the first half of the millennium BC. But God said don't do something, and people going to do what he said not to do. Don't go back in there. It's like Hebrew migration, waves of people going in there. Residents in the interior, people who live there. We're about to start cooking now. Psalm 83, 1 through 7. Somebody read that. I'll read it. Psalm 83, 1 through 7. Bring this back to our memory. I know y'all brains is fried. Psalm 83, 1. Keep not thou silence, O God, hold not thy peace, and be not still, O God. For lo, thy enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up thy head. They have taken crafty counsel, the Aram, to make people bear against thy people, and consulted against thy Saphan, the hidden ones, the treasured ones. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee, the tabernacles of Edom, the Ishmaelites of Moab, of the Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines, with the inhabitants of Tyre. This is from the Horizon History Book of Africa. In the land of the blacks, as well as here, dwell the Philistines, or the Tuareg people, who live like the Arabs in tents. They are without number and hold sway over the land of Gazola, which is the Sahara, from the borders of Egypt to the shores of the ocean, and have asked them through an interpreter why they cover their mouths and noses thus. So we always, ISIS and have all the stuff on. So these customs, these practices go way back to Ishmael, to Isaac, so Africa has so much that has been covered up, and you hear about Africa, you think of malaria and little babies with their belly sticking out and eating rice out their hands, out of a bucket or out of a barrel or something. And now this is what they said when they asked them about why they covered their mouths and their noses thus. They replied, we have inherited this custom from our ancestors. We have inherited this custom from our... So if we are talking about the inhabitants of West Africa and the people who got on ships being the offspring of 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 those who went into Africa from Judea and Israel, then that means the offspring of the offspring of the offspring of the Philistines and Amalek and all these other people would be there as well. I mean, that would make sense. If he says, I'm going to hunt you down there and wherever you go, I'm going to find you and I'm going to get you. And look what they said. We have inherited this custom from our ancestors. They are sworn enemies of the Yehudim. They ain't left. I don't care what. I'm in the desert. Sworn enemies of the Yehudim who do not dare pass hither. So it's still beef. Their faith is that of the blacks. So every time we see the blacks and things like that, it's talking about the Yehudim or the Israelites in West Africa. Now, the people we're talking about are the Tuareg, who said they're the Philistines, and they live in West Africa. So we need to put a picture with this, right? Okay, boom. There's your modern day Tuareg people. That's today. All right. What did it say? They covered their mouths and nose. They live in the deserts. They live in the Sahara. The Tuareg people of today. A little crispy, crunchy. So if I was a European explorer, I couldn't tell him apart from a Mandingo. I couldn't tell him apart from someone of Asante. I couldn't tell him apart from an Igbo. I couldn't tell him apart. I wouldn't know. And then where are they at? Well, that's interesting. I thought the Jews of West Africa was out here too. So I wonder when it's time to decide when the Europeans come, who get on the boat. Who you think get on the boat? We got guns, we got rum. What you got to offer? Who you think get on the boat? But they say there are sworn enemies of our Jews. Who you get that from? Our ancestors. Somebody give me 1 Samuel 17, please. Read 1 through 3. 1 Samuel 17, 1 through 3. First Shmuel or Samuel 17, 1 through 3.
And the Philistines had gathered their armies for battle,
Mm-hmm.
and came together at Succoth, which belongs to Yehudah, and encamped between Succoth and Azekah in Ephes Damim. And Shaul and the men of Israel were gathered and encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array to meet the Philistines.
So you had the Philistines on one side and the Israelites on the other side. Now, they going to have a cookout? Sure. They weren't about to play no ball? What did it say? What did he say? What did they say? Why can't I take their word for granted? They said that we have inherited this custom from our ancestors, and they are sworn enemies of the Jews. They asked them about why you dress like this, and they made sure to say, we hate the Yahudim. Where you live again? You live right here? We got 1 Samuel 17 and 1, folks, and drew up that battle lines. Oluwatu Ikwanu, we read some of his book a little bit before. All the nations and people I had hitherto passed through resembled our own in the manners, customs, and language. Okay, so I'm going to show you. This would be probably Nigeria right in here. Okay, and he's talking about passing through certain lands to get to the coast. Okay. So he says, all the nations and people I hitherto passed through resembled our own in their manners, customs, and language. So there were some places he went where my customs and how we do things, they do the exact same. Now, I don't know them. We have the exact same customs. We have the exact same manners and language. But I came at length to a country, the inhabitants of which differed from us in all these particulars. I was very much struck with this difference, especially when I came among a people who did not circumcise and who ate without washing their hands. Oh, Nelly. They cooked their provisions also in iron pots and had European cutlasses and crossbows, which were unknown to us, and fought with their fists among themselves. Their women were not so modest as ours, for they ate, drank, and slept with their men. But above all, I was amazed to see no sacrifices or offerings among them. The life of Oluwatu Ikwanu, page 30. So you got this young man who is now traveling all over West Africa, and before he gets to the boat, he's noticing different things. There are different groups of people that when I go there, I'm cool because we can communicate. We can talk. Certain things you do, I do. We was taught. Some places I went, it's like, man, y'all sad, y'all wild. And then he gets to the coast and he sees the Europeans for the first time. So what did he say? Igbo culture and Israelite culture. And ye shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin. It shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. You shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin. It shall be a token of the covenant between me and you. Genesis 17 and 11. That's that Old Testament, man. What they got to do with us, what they got to do with Jesus. But there arose up a certain of the sect of Pharisees which believed, saying that it was needful to circumcise them and to command them to keep the law of Moses. So they kept that was here. And we have a young man who said, man, they didn't circumcise. So see, we can see that being passed down. Never, who'd you get that from? My father. Who your father get that from? His father. Well, who his father get it from? His father's father. Okay. What he say? Then he said, in like manner also that women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefaced and sobriety, not with broidered hair or gold or pearls or costly array. 1 Timothy 2:9. This is Shaul. What he say? What he calls up a Hebrew of Hebrews, born on the 8th day with circumcision. So when he talks about modesty of the women, and we just read, Water said the exact same thing. Like, man, them women really wasn't modest as ours. Why did our disciples to transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. So a lot of times we've been brainwashed, I don't say it a bad way, but that don't mean it's not about being clean or unclean, but this tradition of the elders you will find in West Africa, where you came from. You're going to find that there. You will find that there. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands off, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. And Moses said, thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that we may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Exodus 10:25. So in that 2 paragraphs of Olawadu's book, we were able to cover Genesis, Acts, 1 Timothy, Matthew, Mark, and Exodus. He was able to cover his life in the Word, and he ain't got no Bible. Where you get this from? My dad. Where you get it from? My granddaddy. My great-great-granddaddy. My great-great-great-granddaddy. We're going to look at something here. And Brother Basil, I called you all week. I think you have to push button. I called you to get your blessing. So I did it without your blessing, but I called you all week. This is on traditions and culture of the God people. I'll let you listen.
Yes, the Bible does provide clues that we may use to look for the ancient Hebrew. It's just knowing the ancient Hebrew cultures and finding it. So where do we start our search to find the ancient airbase? Isaiah 30 gives us a clue. When you read Isaiah 31 from the Masoretic text, it reads, woe to the stubborn sons, says Yahweh, sons who take counsel and not of me, and pour out a libation and not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. The Septuagint reads, woe, O rebellious children, thus says the Lord, you have formulated counsel not through me, and made alliances not through my spirit, to add sins upon sins. You make alliance by the pouring of libation. This was the means by which an alliance was ratified. Pouring of libation, also known as the drink offering, was a big part of the culture and custom of ancient Israelites. Part of the sacrifices offered to God was the drink offering. So to find ancient Israel in Africa, you should look for people who have the libation pouring or drink offering as part of their culture. This lead from Isaiah 30 narrows the search to Central and West Africa, where libation pouring plays a big part in their culture and customs. Let's watch this video and pay attention carefully to what the priest is saying. That was the high he's dressed according to instructions given to Moshe for the priests. The first thing he does, if you notice, was he raises up the alcoholic beverages and then utter these words. Wopolomau, our creator Mau, our creator the Most High. You see, we have kept these customs since the Most High gave them. We don't just quote scriptures. We show you scriptures from our customs and our traditions that we have kept for more than 3,600 years from the day it was given. Try. Umanyeyaba.
I couldn't have said it that good. So I let Brother Basil do it. And but that's something that when we go back, so when we talk about the blacks, where'd you come, where's the ancestral home? Well, in order to get to the ancestral home, you got to start walking backwards. So walking backwards was going to take us back to West Africa. I'm going to look at another, Basil is of the Gadangmi, the people of Ga, and the Dangmi tribe, they are, it's a combination. So and he's explaining it to me, but it's I have to just take notes when you talk. But anyway, so this is Brother Remy Olona, who wrote some books, and he is of the Igbo tribe of Nigeria, which is a separate part of Nigeria from where Brother Basil's from. Igbo practice that they must be paid their agreed wages before sunset. Israelite parallel is found in Deuteronomy 24:15. The Igbos, and in Intercultural Study of the Largest Jewish Diaspora, page 174. So we're looking at different customs of these different West African tribes, and we're looking at the scripture, and we're just narrowing it down because we're trying to figure out, right, the mystery of black history. Right? Because this is where we know you came from over there. Right? But I know during this month you're going to get an MLK speech. Somebody might be bold and play some Malcolm X or some Marcus Garvey. That's being bold. Right? You might get a little something here. So he says it's their custom to pay somebody before sunset. Deuteronomy 24:15. At his day thou shalt give him his hire, neither shall the sun go down upon it, for he is poor, and setteth his heart upon it, lest he cry against thee unto the Lord, and it be a sin unto thee. We can glimpse the validity of above statements from some established positions of the Igbo people. For example, the Igbos, easy, pig, is the epitome of filth and dirtiness. Before the intrusion of the Europeans, there were no pigs in Igbo land. Okay, page 210 of his book. So, scholars agree and disagree. So, we have the temple at Elephantine Island is also called Aswan or Meroe, okay, deep down the Nile. Okay, that temple was destroyed in 410 BC. Right, we know that the Babylonians came to Jerusalem in what, 586 BC. Okay, so before, so after Jerusalem temple was destroyed, there was a temple at Elephantine Island. Okay, and people might have been shooting them down there. Okay, all right, the Carthaginian Empire. Okay, it was finally destroyed in the Third Punic Wars by the Romans in 146 BC. Okay, the Carthaginians. I think somebody did a movie on History Channel. They had Hannibal as black, and it caused all kind of chaos. Why can't he be black? You're in Africa. But this would be a Phoenician and Hebrew colony, and if once again, as I think that first video said, if you take away Israel from African continent, then you can disassociate. Even though Ham had 4 sons, right? Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. Okay, and then the temple at Lentopolis, which is in the delta of Egypt, right there at the top. There was another temple that was destroyed in 73 AD. Okay, so what's interesting about this one? There was a temple in Jerusalem that was destroyed in 70 AD. Okay, so when the temple was destroyed in Jerusalem here. And here, the temples that are away from Jerusalem got destroyed just a little bit later. So Yah wasn't playing. So the scholars want us to believe that right here, where the Elephantine Island was, that the people there were not of color. That's where Elephantine Island was, right here. That temple was destroyed in 410 BC. Okay. Also, Tunisia, this is where Carthage was. This was the Carthaginian Empire. Okay. That was destroyed in 146 BC. And then right here, this delta where all these little rivers and streams is at, is where the Temple of Letopolis was. So, when there is destruction, okay, once Israelites lost a strategic location, they went deeper in Africa. Okay, so stuff gets beat up and destroyed here, here, and here. Where am I going? I can't go that way. I gotta go here, across, down. We're just trying to figure out, how did everybody end up over here? What was so special about over here? And who was pushing them that way? Was this one a part of Yah's plan? To get your behinds on that boat? Deuteronomy 28:68. Was that part of his plan? To push and drive everybody this way? We're talking about thousands of years. Once Israelites lost strategic location, they went deeper into Africa. The big three. Okay, Ghana, Mali, Songhai. The Ghana Empire. Depending on who you go, if you go through some scholars, they're going to put this as 500, not 300. But we do have some proof that the Ghanaian Empire first started in 300. So this is what a picture what it was looked like from an Arab point of view. And this is in West Africa. So everything that we looked at in part one that talked about the scholars and the teachers and the people who talked about black people, right? They were like, hey, you're an animal. But in reality, this is what you were doing in 300 AD. The Ghanaian Empire lasted for 900 years. It fell in 1240. So about 200 years before the Europeans came. Somebody's duping you. Empire of Ghana. This is the Empire of Ghana in West Africa. Okay. Za el Yemni. This guy, he established a line of kings known as the Jah or Dia dynasty. This Judean traveled from Yemen to West Africa. Okay, we know that there were Jews in Saudi Arabia and southern Yemen because when the temple was destroyed in 70 AD, some went into Africa, some went into Asia, some went into Saudi Arabia. Okay, this Judean traveled from Yemen to West Africa and established the first dynasty. This book is called Tariq es-Sudan, History of Sudan by Aberdam es-Sadi. Says Za al-Amain was derived from Za min al-Min. So he's saying that his name and what it means. And meaning, he came from Yemen by Wargala. So this man came from Yemen by Wargala. Wargala is what is called Algeria. Okay. There were 22 kings reigned before the Hegera in 622 AD when Muhammad makes his flight or whatever. And then 44 kings by 790 AD. Okay. From 800 to 1100 AD was the golden era. So the land was just loaded with gold and iron, and it was also called like the land of gold. Okay. So explorers talked about the economic, the political, the social. I mean, it was just amazing. Okay. And this was a Hebrew kingdom in West Africa. This first kingdom here. Okay. Israelites built by the African rivers. So on the other side of Africa, they stayed on the Nile. They stayed on the Nile, okay? Because it's hot, so you need water, okay? The Niger River was important for a variety of reasons. Nothing was more important than water in the Sahara. This is the first source of water for anybody migrating across the desert. So remember the Nahum Schloss, the European Jew, he said that it was very clear that there had been traces of Israelites migrating across the desert. And if you don't get to water, you're going to die. You are going to die.
It's hot.
So, you know, I mean, it's just, I don't know what to say. Okay, threat from the north. See how Yah repeats stuff? Isaiah 14. So I'm hoping we're going to see a cycle here, and I hope we see it, and I hope I present this properly. But Isaiah 14 and 31, it reads, "Howl, O gate, cry, O city, thou whole Palestina art dissolved. For there shall come from the north a smoke, and none shall be alone in his appointed times." So Yah is talking about a threat from the north to the people of Judah, or the people of Palestine, or Canaan. Then in Jeremiah 4 and 6, We have another word going out from the prophet. Because you know, y'all give you a word, and it might not happen like that next day. It might be 5, 10, 20, 50, 100 years later. Okay, Jeremiah 4 and 6. Set up the standard towards Zion, retire, stay not, for I will bring evil from the north and a great destruction. So this led to the fall of this first Hebrew empire in West Africa. All this gold, all this power, all this money, all this stuff, and they failed. The ancient empire of Ghana failed due to rebellions of the tributary states. Okay, primarily the Susu kingdom in 1235 AD, but the threat from the north was too much. Who came from the north? The Almoravids, I can't never say that right, and the Saharan Berbers. So Muslims, Arabs, because they would convert the Berbers that converted to Islam and brought Ghana to his knees. So we have Arabs and a mixture of people who have converted to Islam coming from the north, putting it into Ghana. Well, we got that in our Bible, don't we? He said it already, though. So there were certain things that was going on in Judah, and Judah was going on, right? So we're going to find out what was going on in Judah was going on in West Africa. If what was going on in Judah, and God said, I'm going to do this, if we find it in West Africa, then we just see the cycle repeating. Okay. Now, after Ghana was the empire of Mali, okay, if you noticed on the previous map, close your eyes a bit. On the previous map, here's Ghana, okay, and then here's Mali. So they just build on top of each other. So what we have is that you'll have a state. For example, we had our civil war. We had states succeed from the south. So in the empire of Ghana, you had a couple states that are like, man, I'm gonna do my own thing. In the midst of doing their own thing, I build up my money, build up my finances, build up my military. I start doing stuff. And then I see the capital city getting weak. Okay, I'm going to rise up. But it's all the same people, is my point. It's the same people. So we have the Mali kingdom, 1230. So as Ghana's falling down, Mali stands up. There were some other smaller, I don't want to say small, but other kingdoms who kind of started it. But Mali was the one that kind of arose and kind of took over. And they ran from 1230 to about the 1600s, okay? 1600s. What was going on before this? Slavery, slave trade. Once again, the things he said in Isaiah and Jeremiah, are we going to find what was going on over here? What was going on over here? Because there was destruction came, wasn't it? Syrians came, Babylonians came, the Romans came, Grecians came. Okay. Remember this? Reading Rainbow. I get LeVar Burton, Kunta Kinte. In the movie Roots, what was he? He was of the Mandingo. Of the Mandingos. If you watched that movie Jamie Foxx was in, slave movie, Django. There was a certain part of the Django movie where they had the Mandingo wrestlers. Okay, once again, Hollywood, no. Crafty counsel to mock and make fun. Okay, so the birth of Mali. The Susu kingdom took advantage of Ghana crippling. It wasn't until the reign of Sundata in 1235 to 1255 that Mali became established and got a stronghold in all the old Ghana territory, extended through trade. The Mandingos had a major effect on agriculture and trade. They had established trade with Arab Muslims in West Africa. So Ghana did not convert to Islam. We're going to do what we do. Now in some of my states, if you're a Muslim state, whatever, you do what you do. Okay. So in the movie, if you remember, they had a fight on the ship. And then the people, they took over the ship and they shot the cannon on the ship, and some of the slaves got hit, and they went back up under the dock, and LeVar Burton was on the thing, on the boat, and he was like, oh, Allah, Allah. So now we know why he was saying Allah. Because at a certain point in time, the religious philosophy changed because of the threat from the north. Is that what the Mandingos were doing before Ghana fell? He said, you're going to worship gods of wood and stone that your forefathers knew not. Mansa Musa, some of y'all probably heard of him, one of the greatest. To me, Solomon was the richest king of all time. A lot of people say Mansa Musa. First off, right off top, at his birth, he was named Musa, which means Moses. Musa. Right, we say Moshe, but he was in Africa. Musa. So Mansa Musa, that's what his mom and daddy named him. So even though there is some sliding towards Islam as a religion, not as my nationality. Just my preference. So once again, the farther you get away, right, the more you teeter off in other stuff. Okay, some historians deem him one of the kings of all time. He extended the Ghana Empire. Dr. Ivan Van Sertima believed that the kings of Mali were the first ones to send ships to America in the 13th century. So around the 1200s, ships were going to South America and Central America, and there's the relics and stuff that are left there today still. Mansa Musa had so much money that he offset countries. On his pilgrimage to Mecca, he throwing out so much gold that gold had no value no more. You got poor people with all kind of gold, banks, all kinds of stuff. He bankrupt. That's what he's known for. But he turned Timbuktu into a global scholastic center. So when we read stuff like Mungo Park and how the Yahudim kind of seemed like inferior, some places yes, but places like Timbuktu, some of the leading scholars, teachers, doctors, astronomers were Yahudim. When the Moors go into Spain in 711, it was the Moors, it was Arabs, and it was Jews. That's why they all got kicked out in 1492. All of them got kicked out. Very common to have two-story houses during his time because the economy was so good. And then Mungo Park discovered in Kamalia, which was Mandingo country, LeVar Burton. 468 years later, Arabic version of the Pentateuch, the Torah. Torah in Arabic. We read earlier where the Jews at Timbuktu, right? They're Jews, many of them there, but they do what? They speak Arabic and they do the prayers of the Moors. But you know, Johann van Blumenbach and all them guys, man, hey, you're just an animal. You ain't built nothing, ain't done nothing. Songhai Empire. Once again, same area, a little bit more extended. This was the last of the big three. Okay, the last. So now we're getting closer to European, right? Transatlantic slave trade. Remember, what was going on in Jerusalem, in Judea, and Israel, Samaria, is going on in West Africa? If so, then we can expect the same punishment coming because God is just and true. Especially to those who took the covenant of Mount Sinai, no matter where you go. So once Songhai also was a tributary state within Mali, Mali began to decline. Songhai becomes independent. Does really good in 15th and 16th century. The Gao city rose up. There was one leader, Sani Ali, who kind of consolidated everything because you got a bunch of people fighting for power. Nothing new when it just comes to people. All right, he took over Old Mali, captured, expanded Timbuktu. Was not a traditional Muslim. Okay, practiced the system of religion of the Gao and Songhai people. So he did not practice Islam. Okay, now after him, a little bit later, Askia Muhammad the Great was Islamic zealot and made people convert, spreaded Islam. The Portuguese established trade with one of the Askia's 4 viceroys in 1448 AD. So remember, you were nothing, but this was as the Europeans start coming over to West Africa, we then had 3 major empires going back to the year 300 AD. Hebrew empires at that. West African history, culture, customs, traditions, and slavery, the continuation and offspring of the ancient Hebrews. I know I'm wearing you out. We're about to be done. Okay, West Africa was called Negro land by the Europeans. So when the Europeans draw a map, they call this Negro land. Ain't a bunch of black people there? Why ain't the whole continent Negro land? What is so unique about right here? West Africa was called Bilad al-Sudan, land of blacks by the Arabs. Remember the one quote we had where they was talking about from Somalia all the way across to Senegal. Duping you. Who are the people of the west coast of Africa? Both buyers, Europeans, and sellers, Africans, saw the people traded into captivity on the African coast as outsiders. Atlas of the Transatlantic Slave Trade, page 1. I'm sorry, I forgot one thing. Now, before we get here, there was a trans-Saharan slave trade. So we'll talk a little bit about this next time in the curses. So we're looking at, under Islamic or Arab captivity, like almost 1,000 years of slavery. That's also part of your history, over 1,000 years of slavery. So God was very consistent with the Assyrians coming in, and the Babylonians coming in, and the Persians coming in, and the Greeks coming in, and every time there was a change of power, if we were disobedient, you're going to be under that oppression, right? With David and Solomon, you're your own nation. But all these other times, you're under, and it never stopped. But if I'm to pull you out of history, biblical history, if I'm to pull you out, then that 900 years was nothing, because you're meant to be slaves. The 1441 to 1807 trade across water, you were meant to be slaves. That's why you can say things like that. So the Igbo of South Central and Eastern Nigeria. This is from Oluwatu Ikwanu. This is what he says. He says, he taught me to shave and dress hair a little, and also read the Bible. Never read the Bible before. Explaining many passages to me which I did not comprehend. He didn't get it. I was wonderfully surprised to see the laws and the rules of my own country written almost exactly here. A circumstance which I believe tended to impress our manners and customs more deeply on my memory. So it's like, wait a minute. Some of this stuff you're talking about, I don't get it. But when they start going through that book, he going through Leviticus and Exodus and Deuteronomy, that made him more excited. He was like, wow, this is what we did. And this is the area of Igbo land, about, 40 million strong. Some of the priests and royal garb in South Central and Eastern Nigeria. These are some of the Igbo Israelites over in Nigeria today. Old chart, flyer to be sold on board. Find Hebos. Okay, because there was a bad mispronunciation of Igbo. We study Hebrew with our bet and our vet. You can vet, right? So when we say Abraham was the Ivri, well, we know if you can easily say Eb, right? Vet and bet. And Brother Basil, the way they pronounce it is the Evet. And we'll look at it here, but the Evet Nigba, Hebrew land. The Yoruba of southwestern and north central Nigeria. When a man desires to marry a girl, his parents visit her parents and make proposals of marriage. If accepted, the suitor sends a present of native cloths and kola nuts, and after consulting the Bawalamo, the oracle. And I think it was Shaul talks about in Romans that it was the oracles of God given to the Yehudi. A day is appointed for the wedding. The bride is put to bed by a female of the bridegroom's family, who remains concealed in the apartment till the bridegroom has joined the bride, after which she secures the tokens of virginity, and coming out of the room displays them to the assembled company. Yoruba speaking people of the slave coast of West Africa, page 127.
Gotta have that call.
So they do the tokens of virginity. And lo, he hath given occasion of speech against her, saying, I found not thy daughter a maid, and yet these are the tokens of my daughter's virginity. And they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. So you displayed them to the assembled company. Why do you do that? Because my father said, and they shall spread the cloth before the elders of the city. Deuteronomy 22:17. That's what the Yoruba do, who are not the Igbo. They don't even get along. And the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamar's father deceitfully, and said, because he hath defiled Dinah, their sister. And they said unto them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one that is uncircumcised, for that were a reproach unto us. Genesis 34:13-14. So now you understand why they were so raged, because of the culture and customs. Hey, she can't have tokens of virginity presented to the community. It's a high honor. That's a very high honor. Very, very high honor. So now we understand the rage, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. Okay. Subgroups of the Yoruba. Some of these groups, when they migrated into West Africa, are huge, and within those groups they break off into subgroups. Okay. So of the Yoruba, you have the Ewe, which is brother Basil, and Evenigba, Hebrew land. The Gadangni people, mixture of God and Dan. The tribe of God, tribe of Dan. 8th-day circumcision, as we saw in the video, drink offerings, red clay on the door during the spring Pesach or Passover, is with the Ewe people. The Oyo kingdom, okay? Oyo kingdom rose in the 15th century, very powerful. So what happened with Ghana and Mali and Songhai? One state breaks away and they just kind of build up their stuff and they say, you know what, I'm going to do me, and we're powerful and we're just going to, so, you know, just the circle, the door kind of revolves over and over. Participated of the trade, so the Oyo kingdom rose in the 15th century and was very powerful. Participated of the trade of slaves, Atlantic and Saharan. Remember, what happened in Jeremiah and is Isaiah and during the time of Judah, if that happened in West Africa, there's got to be the same kind of consequence. Held sway over many states. The Fon people broke from the Oyo kingdom. So these people broke from the Oyo kingdom. This became the kingdom of Dahomey. Okay, Benin today, also known as Wida or Judah. Okay, remember last week we had the door of no return. Okay, that's them, the Fon people. Dahomey, that's the door of no return. Okay, so all these places, people are separate, but they kind of came from the same. But soon after concluding a treaty with the Oyo, King Agaja revived the commerce of slaves with Europeans from Wida, okay, from the people of Dahomey. The slave trade from Dahomey was not the royal monopoly, which it is sometimes represented to have been. Many chiefs were also permitted to trade. Slave trade, Hugh Thomas, page 358. So now we're looking at these Israelite kingdoms. We're looking at these offspring of the offspring of West Africa doing what? Selling their own. It was a big no-no. Wasn't there a big no-no in our Bible?
Sure was.
Oh, it was a big no-no.
In Jeremiah.
Oh boy. Dahomey. Have you ever heard of the Amazons?
Oh man.
Wonder Woman?
Amazon.
You know who they're making a joke of, huh? This is the king's royal court. This is like his secret service super soldiers. These sisters. These were the Dahomean court soldiers. So have you ever heard of Amazons or Wonder Woman? So the cartoons, Wonder Woman, the DC comics, that one planet with all these women that are fighters, they're talking about the home. So this was the royal court. This was like his top soldiers, the sisters, scrapping. Yeah, it's just a man in there too, but this is primarily women. It's primarily only in Dahomey though. Okay. All right, the Akan people, very, very, very large group that migrated into West Africa, and they have over 30 subgroups of people scattered through. So I can't go. We'd be here for 3 days. All right, over 30 subgroups of people scattered throughout West Africa. We're going to talk about primarily the Ashanti, modern day Ghana. Okay, Ashanti is this is in your Bibles. Ashan in Joshua 15:42 and Joshua 19:7. The city of Ashan. Now in Hebrew, Ashan means smoke. Okay, was also a city in the lowland territory of Judah, split with Simeon as well. The Ashanti people, major role in the slave trade. Major role in the slave trade. The symbol of the power of the new empire was the famous golden stool. The Ashanti soon traded slaves extensively with the Dutch. So much gold in Ghana. This is how the king and the royal guard dressed. All gold. Got their kente cloth. All gold. But you were nobody. This is the golden stool of the Ashanti. This is Moses' seat. This started a war between the British and the Ashanti. They wanted to go. Their story behind this is a place of refuge. If the king is coming to arrest you, if you can run through the palace, if you can touch the golden stool, you're free of all charges. Which reminds you of what?
Mercy seat.
Because Ashan also became a city of refuge.
Okay.
Also became a city of refuge. So when you add T-I to end of Ashanti, the people of Ashan, the people of smoke, or the people of Ashan, which was territories and cities in territory of Judah and Simeon. Almost done here. West African history. The belief in the existence of spirits who are supposed to control the affairs of men is coexistent with the use of charms and fetishes. Whether the natives of the country had the Jewish distinction between Deobli and Deamona in northern Guinea is not certainly known, but the inhabitants of certain Guinea undoubtedly have. All right, so they are recognizing the use of charms and fetishes also with the Jewish aspects. Let's see. These extraordinary manifestations, however, are more common among the inhabitants of southern than northern Guinea. All of these spirits, whether good or evil, are more common among the inhabitants of southern Guinea than northern Guinea. All of these spirits, whether good or evil, are supposed to inhabit certain great rocks, large hollow trees, mountains, caverns, deep rivers, and dense groves. We've heard of some of this stuff before, haven't we? Some of this stuff sound familiar? Genesis 31 and 19. Genesis 31 and 19. Read this to you really quick. So they're talking about fetishes and charms and doing certain things. Genesis 31 and 19. And Laban went to shear his sheep, and Rachel had stolen the images that were her father's. So we have ideas of images like little idols and little things, but the people were so superstitious that charms and my lucky rabbit foot. If you find a 4-leaf clover.
Cat across the tracks.
So the charms and fetishes of West Africa will take you back to the Bible. Talked about spirits. They had an idea of good spirits, bad spirits. Matthew 14. Matthew 14. Matthew 14 and 26. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a spirit." And they cried out for fear. And what do they say here? They said there were spirits over where? The spirits inhabited rocks, Large hollow trees, mountains, caverns, deep rivers.